Welcome back to Human Resource Management. I'm Sean Watts. You have my contacts. Week one, we went through the introduction. Week two, we talked about planning and many details related to planning. I think that was clear. I think it was very important how people must understand details related to the coding and the computer software aspect of planning and using big data and Industry 4.0 with human resource planning. We started to also get into recruiting of employees, and the last few minutes of the last class we had, some of your students were able to exchange your resumes and start talking about some of that. So if we have some more time, we can talk a little bit more about that today. I would encourage you to go through this idea of the last class. Week 3, chapter 6, recruitment, shows what a typical good resume looks like and why it's doing this. You might also want to understand, again, the environment, which is very important. For example, I come from North America, and many advanced companies no longer ask you where you're from. And many of these advanced companies are not asking you to give a photo of your resume. It's so strict that some companies will not consider your resume if you have a photo on it. They will reject it automatically. Or if you have their address. Can anybody guess why? In Korea, it is often very good. But in some countries, companies, it's considered bad to have a photo or your address. Why? Take a guess. You look like this is confusing to you, so be wild and spontaneous. Take a guess. Why could it be bad?
Well, like before, I didn't used to like put photo and address in my CV, but nowadays I'm doing that. And like, no matter how much I try to think about it, I have no idea why would companies don't like that.
Okay, what about you, Tobias? Can you guess, a creative guess, what is good about it or what could be bad about it?
I do know that in Germany there's kind of laws against discrimination and stuff, and for that they are recommended to just not accept any resumes with pictures in it, because
So,
they are scared that they could face any discrimination charges. So
good.
that's
Can you
why
give an
most
example
people.
of discrimination?
Yeah. So for example, if you're like white, if you're like a white person and you come from Germany, and there's another person who has this picture in it, and he's like from a different ethnic group or something, and they choose you, then you could say, or anyone could complain and say, yeah, okay, they choose him because of a photo, and they didn't even look on the qualifications. They just were searching for someone and discriminating another. So
Good. Absolutely. Guillaume Lecar, what about the address? How could the address be a problem?
I think it's because if we are not nearly the company, we can have discrimination of the recruiters.
Okay. Is that a 2021 answer or is that a 1980s type of answer? Especially now with coronavirus, the idea of where you are is not that important. But you're right. Some companies, they might only want to hire people close to their building. Okay. Zachary, would you like to add something to it? What is good about using your address and what is bad about using an address?
Using our address can be bad, as Guillaume said, because if you're not near to the company's building, that can be a problem. For example, car traffic or something like that.
Okay, good. Pia, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Maybe the address can be discriminating if you, for example, live in a street that is known to be maybe rich or maybe on the poorer side. So if you put the address in the resume, they can basically figure out your social status, I guess.
Absolutely. So be aware. I'm not saying don't use it, and I'm not saying use it, because in Korea, Many companies and many people like to see a photo on the resume, especially if you're not really scary looking. And they usually like to see your address. I have seen several executives, their first question in an interview is, where is your family, house? Because where your family is exactly related to what Pio was saying. If you're from the rich neighborhood, you're probably expected in Korea to have attended the best schools and the best prep schools, like the Hagwons, better than other areas that might be less well off. And so, yes, that could relate to discrimination. And many advanced companies know that's not good anymore. However, with the 2021 and 2022 focus today, many companies are starting to work and accept workers online. So if you delete your resume address and apply just using an email address or a WhatsApp or some sort of social media contacts to get in touch with you, then you could apply for company jobs anywhere in the world. And I know several people doing it. And what this is talking about is, don't just write what you want to write. Try to research the company, try to research the interviewer, and write something that's mutually beneficial. Write for that other person, work together. HR is supposed to specialize in being able to go between the people. Here's the same idea for a cover letter or a thank you letter. Before the interview, before the application, you write a letter to say the extra reasons why you're good for it. And after your interview, you should also send a thank you to them. And don't just send a basic note saying basic things. Try to add value. Try to say something that shows you know about the company, you care about the company, and how you can add value. And of course, before you go meet the company, expect questions and prepare answers for them. Write down all of these things. Be aware that some companies will be asking you trick questions. For example, what is your biggest problem? Or what is the problem and how did you get over it? They don't want to hear about how you killed people or how you're addicted to dangerous drugs. They want to hear something that is still good for the company. Related to that, one of the students was talking about 1980s details. Since we are all living online, be aware that every company I know, including universities, before they accept people, they will check your social media account. And so be aware of that. If you have social media conversations that are open complaining about your boss, don't expect good things in the interview. Even though it's a different company, if you're the type of person that's going to make the company look bad, many companies might avoid you. So you may want to revise your social media before you get into these companies. We've talked about that. We've gone through several different things, the idea of references and where you get people. You can get qualified applicants from anywhere as long as they're good. There's advantages to internet recruitment. There's advantages to personal recruitment. Most companies, some people say, already have a candidate selected in their mind when they're looking to hire somebody. And so they're just posting a job for the legal purposes to show that there's not discrimination. Be aware of that. So the more connection you have with the company, the more connection you have with that specific manager or the director, the better. So use your activities today. Start developing those relationships and connections today, especially in East Asia, where it's incredibly important. So we've talked quite a lot about that. If there's any questions related to the idea of recruitment, let me know. We will have a makeup class for the classes we missed earlier this week. But to go on with week 4, chapter 7, the idea of selecting employees, I just wanted to start introducing that to everybody. The learning objectives is what are the steps in selection. describe the aptitude, the psychomotor, the job knowledge, the proficiency, interest, the personality tests, polygraph tests, structured, unstructured interviews. Some people may laugh, companies don't really do polygraph tests. Well, I had a brother that he had to do a polygraph test, and I didn't have to do polygraph tests, but I had to do similar tests for companies I was working with in the past. My brother's interview was the most extreme that I've ever heard of. His interview lasted 2 years. So after he applied for the job, he was selected for the interview 2 years later. And all throughout that, the company continued to check the Facebook, the background of my brother, and what he was doing, who he was hanging around with, what type of things he was doing. So the idea of selecting employees it gets pretty interesting. Be aware of these details. Other learning objectives, the idea of predictive validity, the concurrent validity, the content, the idea of reliability is important. So check these details, be aware of them. The overall idea of selection is the process of choosing from among many different applicants. There are prerequisites to selection, like a job analysis or human resource planning and recruitment. You can all think about those type of things, but here is a chart talking about the selection process. But what's missing from this chart? Can anybody guess what's missing here? Somebody just asked me earlier this morning about what the answer is. Some of you are doing a research project. I think 2 different groups are doing research projects related to technology and AI. That's a big hint. How does that impact the selection process? I went through it very quickly in the past, but it was called ATS. Anybody aware of those details? What is ATS? How about Chocabos? Can you guess what is missing from the selection process in the image we are showing now? Zephyr, I see you've raised your hand. If you wanted to help him out, go ahead.
Yes. Are you talking about the medical examination?
It could be, yes. Many companies in the United States, they will do a medical test, but they're not really allowed to reject you based on health reasons. You
Okay.
could reject it. Yes, I don't see that easily in this chart, but that's actually not the focus I was looking at. That's another thing that's missing from the process. What else? Keywords. What keywords are we looking at? How does that relate?
You did just talk about what an employee or a potential employee is maybe doing during this interview stage. So maybe keeping up with updates or personal information.
So during the interview, you'll have the diagnostic interview, you'll have the employment testing, you'll have the preliminary interview, and good interviewers should take notes and compare those notes. Usually there may be, I've done many interviews of company applicants and university applicants. And usually we have so many applicants, we divide the interviewing up into different teams. And then after the actual interviewing is finished, those team of interviewers gets together and I will suggest my top candidates and the next person suggests his top candidates. And then we'll always argue against who are the final candidates we'll select. And it gets into the notes. Yes, that's part of the interviewing process. What about the algorithms? This tip that we're talking about here. And ATS. It's 2021, 2022. What is almost most important? What is controlling our lives? How is Industry 4.0 important? The idea of software and the algorithms. Usually you will start by applying with some document or a file, and that goes through a software program that is just looking for keywords. So anybody that's really interested in getting a job, you must research the company and research those people that are going to be doing the interviewing. And not only do you have to know very well about the company and know very well about the job and know very well about the person, that's interviewing what is his job and what does he like, but then you have to do the research about how can you actually help add value and help them do that. And then find out what are those keywords, because those keywords you have to have in your cover letter, in your resume, in your application, not just once, but also maybe repeat the exact same thing using the same idea but different words. So use different synonyms, because computer software programs will go through like ATS programs, automatic transcription services, for example, or automatic services that will filter through thousands of applications and just put the people that have the best keywords or the most keywords at the top of the file. And whoever doesn't have those keywords will probably be either rejected or put at the bottom of the file. So make sure you know about that. Don't just check what you're saying in Facebook or Instagram about work related topics, but also understand that what you do say, those keywords in Facebook, could be searched. And if they are found, that could be a good thing. It could help you. So don't block out everything in Facebook. Sometimes Facebook will help you get the job, because Facebook is supposed to be the real you. And if you are talking about how you love that company topic and you're talking about it, you're developing something related in your free time with Facebook, that's a very good thing. But it's also more important to have those keywords in your resumes. So that's important. Is that clear? How the computer software programs use codes, use algorithms, use formulas. They use robots to scan thousands of applicants to look for the top. And those robots, they don't have a brain to identify, what's good, bad, and in the gray area. They just are programmed to look for keywords. So you have to have those keywords, research the job, check those keywords, have that in there. And then increasingly the AI and Industry 4.0 is coming into effect. Is that clear, Jungle? Okay. Have you checked any job and started to try to find keywords? Just the first step is try to find the keywords, but the second step is, have you tried to put those keywords in your resume many different times? If not, you may want to try thinking again about applying to those jobs. Any questions about that? Because it's very important. I don't see any hands up, so I'll just assume that's no. Next one, the application form, the first step in the selection process. Of course, it provides basic employment information that's used in later steps, but it's also used for finding those keywords. For example, it's used to screen out unqualified applicants. If you don't write those keywords in, you will be discarded maybe automatically. Questions that should be eliminated from pre-employment inquiries. For example, you're not supposed to talk about race or color or national origin and religion. You're not supposed to talk about if you have arrests or convictions or your credit rating or your address. But sometimes those application forms may have things in here that talk about that indirectly. So can anybody talk about, not just today, today is controlled by mostly older people that were brought up and raised by people several years ago. So understanding that, how is Korea impacted by application forms? What are some things that would look for? What are some things that are important in Korea when you're applying for jobs? Any ideas? Ziffer, I see that you think it's a good question. What about you, Jimok Jo? Maybe Jimok Jo is not in class today. What about you, Cho Haewon? Are there some things that you think are important in Korea related to what are things that they generally look for in general application forms? What are the standard things they look for and why? Do you have any ideas?
Not really. I don't know.
Have you ever heard, for example, the Samsung company, where it was founded, number one, and then number two, which province in Korea usually has an advantage when applying to Samsung? The answer is the same. The answer for a lot of companies is generally the same. Some very successful companies have started the company in their hometown province area, and now that they're globally successful, they try to give back to the community, especially to where they were raised and where they were brought up. So they will give preference to people from that area. It's slowly changing, but for a long time, that has been kind of a standard idea. Same thing, for example, if you went to the same university. For example, um, in Korea, some people say a judge, the national judges for the country are usually selected from one university. Can you guess which university those judges come from? Cho Hye-won, top judges in the whole country of Korea usually come from one university. Not always, but most often they come from one university. Has three characters in the name, starts with an S. S-N-U.
Then it's Seoul National Law School.
Seoul National University, yes. A lot of company executives, many of them come from Yonsei or other universities that are connected with their environments, yes. So those type of things are applied in Korea. Be careful with the local legislation when hiring abroad. For example, I just told you, sometimes some companies cannot accept your application if you give your home address. I was surprised. I'm an international management professor, and I applied for a university in my hometown, but they rejected me because I had my address there. And I talk about how I was raised there. So they wouldn't even consider anything after they saw that. So be aware of that. You need to be careful with the local legislation when hiring abroad. It doesn't matter what is normal for you, it matters what's normal for where you are applying. In Korea, they like to see your picture. In Korea, they usually like to see your address. But in other countries, it changes. Employment application forms, processing, weighted application forms. They assign different weights or values to different questions.
Professor,
Yes, go ahead.
there is one thing that I want to share about the one factors should be limited from the Korea. This is the story I heard from the alumni of the KC student, and he was hired in the Daegu Bank, and he told me a lot of the people in the high position of the banking companies, they like to hear the information of the family, because if they hire persons with a good family, they might have a lot of clients, wealthy clients for their bank. So they like to hear family information very, very often.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. That's very, very true. And thank you for not saying the name of a bank. I didn't hear that, and I didn't hear the details to identify it, because if you did say it, that could be illegal to make some organization look bad. But that is very, very popular amongst many, many countries. And especially in Korea, many people, even universities, will select candidates based on their geography. As I said, one reason with the geography is because you're from the same hometown as them. Another reason, maybe you're from a rich neighborhood. If you are from a rich neighborhood, right, your friends could be good customers, or even for university, you may donate back to the university. You may help with the alumni, those type of things. It helps a lot. Be aware of those details. You may want to have a post office box address designed in a certain way. So that's very important. What else? There are connections based on geography. There's connections based off of state or provincial areas. There's connections based off of rich neighborhoods versus poor neighborhoods. There's connections based off of a few other things. Again, most people are applying to universities they're applying to companies after they have finished universities. The other thing that is big is your connections with universities. If you're from a similar university as those people working in the company or the owner of the company, that is a big standing. One of the things that is maybe so often used around the world is using alumni from your university to get inside information about the company. In North America, like in Canada or in USA, you call somebody that graduated your university 5 years ago and you ask them a couple of questions saying, I'm interested in working for your company too, they may just hang the phone up because they're only focused on doing their job. But in Asia, where the group orientation is so strong, a lot of people will think they have to continue helping their group. And their group is the geographic group, the group is their elementary school group, the middle school, the high school, and especially the university group. So if you're from the same university as somebody that's working in the company, that person should give you a lot of information to help you get those jobs. Consider that when you're planning to survey people for class projects. What you identify in any class should be good, but sometimes how you learn it could be more important. So the relationships are incredibly critical with human resource management. What about the main idea that most people forget? When we talk about culture, some people think of I'm from Korea, I'm from Canada, I'm from whatever country you want to say, but they forget about your own culture. Try to understand your culture and how your culture may be different than the culture of the person you're going to work for or the culture of the person interviewing you. That is called what? Cho Hee-won, do you remember what is your culture test or a website usually called? There's a test or a website that identifies your culture, your personality, your characteristics. So Linda, do you also know? If not, oh, terrible. So you probably, I won't even ask you the question because I've been doing this for so many years. Almost every student, they fail the basic question of tell me about your culture. Who are you? If we play a game and I say we're both in New York City and I'm talking to you about interviewing you for a job and I ask you where are you from and you say you're Korean, maybe I've never been to Korea before and I ask you describe your culture. Some people just talk about I'm from the land of Samsung or Hyundai or Andre, you have your hand up. Did you want to identify that?
Yes, is it the MBTI test, the 16 personalities?
Yes.
Talking about? Yeah.
So the Carl Jung developed a personality test, character test. It is now referred to as the MBTI test. It's very, very popular in a website called 16personalities.com, and it's also popular in a different website called humanmetrics.com. If you go through that and identify your characters, it also tells you how you communicate, how you learn. That is a huge part of human resource management. You must know how people are different. Why? Because in HRM, you are going through and you're not only just selecting employees to do a job, but you're selecting characteristics and personalities to work together. If you identify that the CEO, hates people that are chit-chatty, then hiring people that are chit-chatty is going to create problems in the company. Maybe the CEO will not only fire that new person that it's chatty, but they may fire you in human resource management for just hiring them. So make sure you understand your culture and the culture of other people and how those can mix together, how you need to modify and make adaptations when you're working together. So preliminary interviews, the whole idea of how to conduct interviews, be aware of that and be aware of, I was just showing supposedly great lessons that you can argue with. I want you to argue because the more you argue, the better you may understand details. Confidence is key. Has anybody heard how when you're interviewing, how you can grow your confidence? That idea of right at the very first part of the interview. Some people make up their mind of, is the person a good person or a bad person within the first few seconds of an interview. So how can you prepare for that? What are some things you should think about with the preliminary interview? Any? Andre, before you walk into your very first interview, do you agree that the managers, they may make up their mind whether they like you or they don't within 10 or 15 seconds? Sometimes within less than 3 seconds.
Of course, I think it depends on what kind of interview are you going to take.
Okay,
because if
go
you are
ahead.
if you are applying for, let's say, if you are applying for a job at a good company and it's a good job, you should not probably walk in like training pants, because that's gonna be a turn up immediately. So the first impression is really important. You should also not smell probably, and everything that goes with good hygiene.
Okay. How about who's a Joe? Hey, one. Have you ever heard of somebody going to a university interview in track pants? Or just casual jeans and a t-shirt?
Oh, actually, it is my experience when I had to university interview. I wear my high school uniforms, since
Oh, okay, good.
it is
Explain why.
since it is more a formal uniform than the others, like wear t-shirts or jeans. It is more. Yeah.
It's more formal. Okay, good. And I assume your high school was a good high school. It's not the worst high school on the planet. So it was you were proud to have that uniform?
Yeah.
Good. Jungho, you have something to add?
Yes. I also heard this from the alumni who's working in the bank. He told me that if you want to go to interview for the banking, appearance matters very. Appearance matters, because he told me banker is a job which needs a lot of credit from other people. So if you untie your shoes, or if your appearance looks bad, they will think you are not proper person for the banker. So
Yes.
like if you walk in,
Not
if
just
you
in a
go to
suit. You should
yeah.
have a suit, but it's not just a suit. If you walk in and your button's broken or your shoe is untied, even small little things like that, or if you have coffee stains on your clothes, those small little things could make a big impact when you're interviewing. And absolutely, in Korea, it's very important, but everywhere in the world, some people say decisions are created in the first 30 seconds. A few less people, but still a lot of people say the interview decision is decided within the first 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. So wear good clothes, research the company. What does the company respect? What does the company want and value? And give them what they want, give them what they value. That's a good thing to think about. What is another thing? Maybe you're shy. If Pia is a very shy lady, and she usually is nervous about talking all the time. We're joking, hypothetically, for example. Pia, can you guess how can you grow your confidence to look better for an interview?
Yeah, maybe I could practice before, like to get rid of nervousness and to have some answers prepared, to not be totally unaware of what to say in certain situations.
Yes, definitely practice before. As we were talking about, where was it? in the beginning of last class, we went through here's what a typical resume looks like, and there's no format you have to follow. Every company is different. This is just a popular style, which is good. And the cover letter and possible things to practice the questions you may be asked and think about these questions. This file here shows possible questions and good possible answers. Try to prepare for those for sure. Absolutely, you have to prepare for them. But what if you're shy? What if Pia is shy? How can she grow her confidence? Confidence is king for many, many, many jobs. The more confidence you have, most people think the smarter you are and the better connected you are and probably the better social skills you are, just because of how you act. Maybe it's not even true, but how you act with confidence. If you walk in and show confidence, sometimes the Einstein could be right next to you, but he's worried about how to describe the E equals mc squared. So him being worried going in and you being confident may put you miles ahead in the interview than these others. I'm not saying that's best. I'm just saying the reality of the world. So be aware of that. So how can you grow your confidence? Pia says, practice the questions. Good. What else? Everybody should do that. Does anybody know how to control your body language? So Linda, you had your hand up. Is it because you know how to control your body language, or is it something else?
I wanted to talk about one of the most important thing for the interview. It's about the body language, because it shows our confidence. It's important. It's play with our eyes, facial expression, and also body movement.
Yes, absolutely. So be aware of what Celinda was just saying. My question was a little bit different. My question was asking you, how can you manage your body to make confidence? If I just repeat that, it sounds very strange. Some people think confidence is just part of your character. You either have it or you don't. Well, that's not true. Confidence comes from chemicals in your body, and you can make those chemicals. For example, that idea of, let's see, when you go through, you have the idea of the cover letter, and in the cover letter and your resume, you have that. You can't really change that once you're in the interview. But when you go into the interview, that idea of smiling helps grow your confidence a little bit. If you force yourself to smile, eventually smiling will become easier to do. But does anybody know what is a body position that will, just by the body position, make your body create certain hormones that will make you more confident and happier? Anybody, have you ever heard about that?
It's
No,
like
did you?
chin up and shoulders back.
Good.
That's what
keep
our
going. Even more. Chin up and shoulders back. That's just part of it. It's a very important part, but that's one of it. Don't slouch. Slouching, and I don't know if you can see me, but slouching and covering your body like this and crossing your legs, the more you do that, research has shown that when you do this action here and cross your legs, or when you go like this, when you're putting your hand on your neck, like just leaning on your chin, biologically, they said that was because of cavemen had to do that to protect themselves when they're being attacked by tigers and lions and dinosaurs. So when you're being attacked, when you're afraid, you protect yourself, you protect your vital organs. And the opposite, how would you describe, Andre, how do you describe the body language of an Olympic athlete that just won, or the world's best athlete that just won any competition there is? What does their body look like immediately in the first 2 or 3 seconds? As soon as they win, how do they look?
They usually raise their head to the sky, raise their arms, they smile.
They spread their arms, they spread their legs, they raise their head, they spread their body out. The more you do this, the more your body feels you are relaxed, feels you are safe. And exactly, everybody needs to copy Andre. And if you do that for 120 seconds, if they do that, the research shows for 2 minutes, in a bathroom or in a hallway or anywhere before the interview starts, those 2 minutes will create enough of those chemicals like testosterone and cortisol to make you happier and make you more confident, even if you're not a confident person. So do that before, and as Pia said, practice those questions. You walk into the interview and you feel and you look more confident than others. So be aware of those types of things. Obviously, it's best to know your stuff, to know the skills, to know the job and be able to help the company. But knowing people, knowing your personality and other personalities, know how people interact. That's the whole focus of HR, human resource management. Understand how humans interact themselves and with others, and simple things like that, how a smile changes things, how your body posture changes things. Don't necessarily cross your legs in an interview or even when you're waiting for the interview to start, because some people say the research shows that crossing your legs and folding your arms makes you less confident. It's programming your brain to protect yourself. So hopefully that helps. If we go on and talk about other things, there's many types of testing with jobs. How many of you have not just been through an interview, but how many of you have been through a crazy interview, not a typical interview, something that you did not expect? Have any of you been through an interesting interview and you want to share the stories? Jung-ho, you have your hand up. Share your experience.
No, I actually, I think that was a technical mistake, but I don't have any interviewing experience.
Okay, have you ever heard of how some interviewing or testing can be surprising? You all know of one person goes into an interview and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people will check you or test you. That's the typical one. What is an alternative? What is a way to check your mental status or your personal status, your social status? What is another interview type that could check that? Nobody's ever heard of group interviews where they give you a task in a group, and many times they're looking for not the person that's the smartest, but the person that is the best leader, the person that can actually get the people talking about this question, regardless of if that person finds the answer or not. So how you manage other people is good, but be very careful. Many people know that is a popular interview style, especially in group interviews. And so some people that are terrible at leadership may start yelling and ordering people around. You may want to be ready to, how do you deal with those types of things? How do you get ready for those situations? What about the idea of, I've worked for Silicon Valley companies before, and some companies actually will take you for a lunch. For example, you apply to work for a Silicon Valley company, and the HR says, we're going to introduce you to people for the interview at 3 o'clock. But if you could show up at 2:30, I'd like to talk to you about it just beforehand to get ready. And that person actually takes you into the cafeteria or a nearby bar and starts trying to get you drunk. How do you manage those things? Do you have the social skills to interact with people, especially if you're going to be in sales or marketing where you have to interact with other people? If you can't manage casually in other environments, social environments, then you can't manage social environments very well. That's part of the job. The HR many times will do that. They will take you sometimes to a restaurant, find out how do you eat. Do you eat with your mouth open, going nom, 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 nom? Sometimes that alone may not get you the interview. So what about different examples? You must have heard of several different examples of companies and different interview techniques. Anybody hear of different examples? As we said, with banking, you have to be composed and you have to be precise. For example, you meet and somebody offers to buy you ice cream beforehand, and the bill comes and the bill is wrong. Sometimes that bill coming wrong is on purpose to see if you notice those mistakes. And you might think it's not even part of the interview. So be aware that interviewing and management has been around for so many years, hundreds of years now. They're starting to look beyond the typical interview because too many people are prepared for it. How can they test the real you, not the fake you? So be aware of those many different things. They're checking your aptitude, they're checking your psychomotor skills, measuring the person's strength, dexterity, coordination. Are you able to go out and interview in a social environment? For example, sports. A lot of sales and marketing links to sports. And if you can play sports, you probably have a bigger social network than other people. And they may be checking some of those things, even though there are laws against it. Do you know of any jobs that can get around those laws or rules? Do you have to always have the perfect religion and the perfect bank account and the perfect family? Or do companies have to all follow the law and not ask you questions based on your religion or your weight or your height? Are there any jobs that still to this day and probably for many more years will continue to ask those personal questions? Anybody want to work in the airlines being a flight attendant? Do you think flight attendants take anybody? Depends where you are. In North America, they have to take anybody that can do the job. But in many parts of Asia, they only interview people if you're at a certain height and a certain weight and a certain body style. They say it's not because of discrimination. They say they want somebody slim enough to be able to go through those chairs, the seats on a plane. But the reality is it is still part of discrimination. And in some countries, they're illegal, but in other countries, they're still popular. Be aware of that.
I think it is one of the requirements for the candidate to apply to the flight attendants in Vietnam.
It's
So
still
even the list
definitely
as the requirements for the candidates.
yes. It's definitely still a requirement in Vietnam and in many countries. No matter what company we're talking about, no matter what job we're talking about, no matter what country we're talking about, you must know the job knowledge. Be prepared. Research the heck out of the company and the people that are going to talk to you about details. Anybody that walks into a job and starts saying, you know, how do you spell the company name, or what exactly does the company do, or what exactly, what do people in your department do? Those questions are so basic. If you don't know them, it shows you don't care. If you don't care enough to research that job detail, you're not going to be very good at doing the job. So make sure you know that and be proficient. Know how well a job applicant can do sample work to be performed in the job. It's best for you to know and be able to do the job, or even start doing the job before the interview, before you start talking. All of that information will definitely help you. Interest, personality. I've seen several people actually go into an interview, and when you ask about things like you should all be planning to develop your long-term career plans, your dreams. And so you are at one stage of success and happiness. You should be planning to get up to your dream goals. But when they're talking to you about it, make sure you understand that when you're in an interview and they talk to you like a young person saying, what do you want to do in 5 years from now? Or what's your idea of success 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Many people say, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do in the future. How is the manager going to interpret that? Tobias, what do you think? Generally, any manager that goes in and interviews somebody and asks this person, what is your 5-year plan, 10-year plan? And they say, I have no idea.
I think it shows that you don't have any vision for your life. So like you're not really sure about your own goals, and yeah, why should they hire you if you don't even know what you want yourself? So yeah, you might be discovering that this job isn't anything for you in like 1 year or 2 years, and then they've had the costs for hiring you and stuff. So like it's a lot of uncertainty.
Uncertainty, and they may hire you maybe by accident, but if you don't know really what you want to do, and then next year you decide you want to do something else, you're probably going to change jobs. You're going to quit. They're going to invest so much time, so much energy into training you that then they have to start all over again. It's too much of a waste. So be aware of that. What is the answer to that? Maybe as a professor, I will feel bad if I tell you to lie. So somebody else say it. Zachary, what should you do when you're in an interview and somebody asks you, what do you want to do in 5 years or 10 years from now?
You just said we don't have to lie, but if it's the only solution to have the job, I will lie because to be honest, I don't know. So if I say I don't know to the recruiter, I think this is not good. So I don't know what to do. Maybe lie.
Okay, Jungo, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
I think in Korea, a lot of people say, I will bury my skull and bones in this company.
Very, very long-term plan. But yes, absolutely. You should have most of your answers designed so they're mutually beneficial. They should benefit you and the company. Anything that's not related to the company, they probably don't want to hear about. So it's the end of class right now. I will be talking with you, and the teaching team is going to be talking to you about getting a makeup class later this week or on the weekend. What times are important, we're going to be talking about. But just be aware, when we are recruiting, you have to think of the big picture. What you want is nice, but you have to know what the company wants and work in a mutually beneficial way. The more you know about these details, the better, including the Carl Jung MBTI tests and characteristics. So with that said, thank you very much. We've covered quite a lot from chapters weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4.